Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Thriving Dentist podcast. I am your co host, Naren Arul Raja. Today, we are excited to bring an expert, someone with decades of experience both in dentistry and the topic we're going to be talking about. So, Dr. Levine, Dr. Lon Levine, I'm sure many of you know his name. If you don't, you really need to get to know him because technology and AI and all how technology is helping us is only accelerating, and there's no better expert to speak to because Dr. Levine both has the insider's view because he is a dentist. Dr. Levine, are you still a practicing dentist?
No, I practiced for 10 years as a periodontist, and I just found that it really wasn't what I wanted to be doing full time. I loved working with dentists as a specialist, but didn't love doing perio. As you know, periodontal patients are tough and they're very non-compliant, which is how they end up in your office in the first place. And I transitioned about 25 years ago. My initial thought was I would do both, but I just got so busy doing this, and I realized there's no way I could do full-time practice and run a company that does IT for dental offices. So I haven't picked up a 15 scalpel blade in 24 years. So it's been a while.
That's awesome because I agree. It's hard to be the best in the world at two things. So you need to focus. But you are serving the patients by serving the dentists, at least your company is, right? So, and of course, as somebody who has been in the profession, you know the do's and the don'ts and what works and what doesn't, and what are the traps and what are the concerns, and how do dentists think. So I hope that allows you to create a solution and provide outcomes that are much more in line with what works for a dental practice.
Yep.
So when you were practicing on your own, you said you did work with a lot of general dentists, correct? So were you like working at different offices, so you really saw from the inside out what's going on?
A little bit, as back when I started my practice in 91, the way that most periodontists got patients was referrals from other offices. So, I would meet with the dentist, we would do lunches, I would do educational things, but it was much more of a referral-based relationship. Nowadays, periodontists, oral surgeons, maybe half of their patients come through other offices, through general dentists, and half might come through their own marketing or other things that they're doing. Patients are becoming more sophisticated. They understand, who does implants, and they realize they don't necessarily have to go through a general dentist. So I think that relationship has changed. But so what happened is that I was working part-time with an orthodontist. He needed help with this technology. He knew that this was something I was into, and I helped him set up his office. And I started getting a number of requests from other offices to come into their practices and help them, because this is, like I said, this is back in the mid 90s, late 90s. This is long before Shine, Patterson, Carestream were major players. It was all small companies and small products that people didn't have the knowledge or the skill to get them to interact with each other. That was something that I was able to do. So I did get to see firsthand what dentists were struggling with. And then when I did make the decision that I was going to do this full time, I was practicing in Vermont. I moved to Southern California thinking that I would have a local business just in Southern California because there's so many dentists here. It didn't work out that way because Howard Foran asked me to moderate a bunch of the Dental Town forums, and Joe Blaze, who was editor of Dental Economics, he asked me to be the technology columnist. So my name was getting out all over North America. And to this day, most of our clients are all across North America. The vast majority of our clients, I'd say 98%, I've never met in person. It's all been through phone calls, Zoom calls, emails, whatever. But, there's a few local here in Southern California that I know, but most of them are spread all over the place, and we've never met in person.
That's awesome. So that I know many people already know you. When we did events with you, like hundreds of people attended, and all of them know you by name. So, but for those who don't, I just want you to kind of tell me a little bit about what made you start Digital Dentist. What do you do now versus what did you start in the early days? What were you doing? Just give us this, the story behind, what are you up to and how did you get here?
Sure. So as I said, so the way it started is that when I worked with that orthodontist and helped him to set up his office, he had gotten a quote that I thought was very outrageous. It was like $50,000 for 2 computers. And this was a guy who didn't know how to turn on the computer. And I had this epiphany, like, it's too bad that dentists don't have someone that they can turn to that understands technology, but also understands things from a dentist standpoint. And all of a sudden, this light bulb went on. I was like, well, I can do that. And as I said, it started off as a part-time thing, and it became so busy that I realized I had to make a decision. California had just passed licensure by credential, so I gave up my practice in Vermont, moved here. So the focus of our business when we first started was just straight IT, purchasing computers, networking, monitors, mounts, digital X-rays, cameras, more hardware focused. And that was fine for about 5 or 6 years. And then the economy dropped out. We were at 2008, 2009. And most of at the time, if someone came to me and said, hey, I need a whole new office, I need X-rays, I need cameras, it was a $50,000, $60,000 investment. And, when the economy bottomed out, most people were very hesitant to do that. So I came up with, this idea relatively quickly. I said, well, it's going to be hard to get them to do a $50,000 purchase, but maybe we can do a $2,000 or a $3,000 or $5,000. And we started focusing more on services. And I became what's called a managed service provider, an MSP. It's basically a fancy way of saying automation. The things that we used to do manually, we now have systems so we can remotely log into people's computers. We can automatically patch their systems. We can, get alerts when there's problems, things that we didn't have access to before. So I focused on that for a little bit. And then HIPAA, the final omnibus rules were passed in 2013. We focused a lot on HIPAA compliance, which we still do to this day. But we found that for whatever reason, a lot of practices, HIPAA didn't move the needle. They rightfully assumed that the chances of them being audited were low. They didn't feel that they were necessarily at risk, which of course is not true. But we found that it just wasn't exciting. The thing that really changed the equation for us in the model that we have now is ransomware. Once that became as prevalent as it is, we pivoted and really started focusing more on cybersecurity, on preventing ransomware infections, dealing with them once they do happen, recovering from them, if that happens. So that's been the focus. And I would say lately, I haven't fully developed it yet, but I want to start doing some type of AI consultancy as well. There's so many different AI products out there. Most dentists are hearing about it. They see some people are using it. In my experience, a lot of AI is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not making life easier for dentists. So I think I can be beneficial in helping to guide people through the adoption of AI in their practices. So that's our focus is, we work with offices all across the US and Canada to anything from computers, monitors, networks, backup, disaster recovery, encryption, email, application whitelisting, staff training, anything IT related we do. So that's really what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years with shifts along the way.
Perfect. I do have some questions around what is a managed service and all that stuff, but I'm going to hold those for now.
Okay.
I'm going to just jump into a comment you made before I talk about cybersecurity. You said HIPAA is not something that really is something that dentists are excited about, at least in 2026 as we are recording this. So is it like 1 out of 100 who are into that kind of stuff right now? I'm just saying, what are you saying versus your other services?
Yeah, so it's still critical. And anyone that's gone through a HIPAA audit knows how bad it can be. And it's almost impossible to not go online and see news on a daily basis of some major organization that's been hit with some HIPAA fines and penalties for non-compliant. It's still very much a factor. What we have found from working directly with dentists is if I come in with the approach is, hey, work with us, and I promise we can get you more HIPAA compliant, because there's no such thing as 100% compliance. There's 700 pages of rules and regulations, and impossible. If our approach to an office is, hey, the reason you want to work with me is I can get you more HIPAA compliant, I'm probably going to lose that client, because they just don't, it doesn't concern them as much as I think it should. I think the ADA has done a somewhat mediocre job of educating dentists on HIPAA compliance and what needs to be done and what happens if you're not compliant. So our approach is to say, listen, we're going to listen to what an individual client's needs are, but typically when they come to me, they'll say, hey, I'm worried about ransomware. I'm worried about my backup. I wouldn't be able to recover if there was a disaster. I'm worried that we don't have control over the data and what the staff are able to see. I'm worried about, this and that. I can't sleep well at night, not about that. We'll come in with the approach, okay, we can absolutely help with all this. And oh, by the way, you're not HIPAA compliant. You're not doing the things that you should be. The good news is that the things that I'm going to do to get you more secure are also going to get you more compliant. It's basically killing two birds with one stone, because it's really the same set of rules and guidelines that you would use to get HIPAA compliant are also going to get you more cyber secure and protect and secure that patient information. So they're very much interconnected. And so HIPAA is still there. I think it's still an issue, but it's just not something that we push with our new clients as a reason to work with us, because people, for whatever reason, like I said, it's not moving the needle. They don't, oh my God, I'm going to get fined by HIPAA. It's not that hard to find dentists who have been hit with ransomware, or to know somebody that's been hit with ransomware. That's almost every dentist we work with says, yeah, we got hit with it, or the guy down the street got hit with it. But it's a lot less frequent for someone to say, yeah, I know somebody that went through a HIPAA audit. It's actually very infrequent.
Right. So let me just one last question on HIPAA. So is it some kind of a government department that does these audits?
Yeah, well, it could be a few things. So HIPAA is run by the Office of Civil Rights, Health and Human Services. You could certainly get dinged by them. Every state dental society, state board has mechanisms in place as well, that if a patient has had an experience at an office that they feel that their data was at risk, they can reach out to those individual state licensing boards, and you would still be the subject of, whether it's an actual in-office audit, or there's other things that they can do to try to gather the information that they need. But between national and state and local, there's no escape, one way or the other, if they are worried about what you're doing. Because, the whole premise of HIPAA is that patients are giving us their most critical data, their name, their address, their phone number, oftentimes their social security numbers, credit card information. They have a reasonable expectation that you're going to do everything within your power to protect and secure that. That's the whole premise of HIPAA. Of course, the devil's in the detail. And the real issue with HIPAA from dental offices is not so much, are you doing what you should be doing? It's what are the consequences if you don't do it? And that's where HIPAA has a lot of teeth. When we first started implementing HIPAA services for our clients, a lot of them compared it to OSHA. But the difference is that OSHA, even with the worst offenses, you're typically only getting a slap on the wrist. HIPAA fines and penalties, it's not unusual for us to see hundreds of thousands, 7-figure fines or settlements, because they take it pretty seriously, that if they figure that this is not something that you really should be doing.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's jump into cybersecurity, right?
Sure.
So I want to talk about, from a 10,000-foot view, one option is buy insurance, right? So that's one way to protect yourself. And both HIPAA and cybersecurity, like you said, there's no 100%. You can improve.
Right.
So give us the broad strokes on how do you attack this? If I'm a practice owner, how do I think about this? How do I attack it? Am I just buying insurance and forgetting about everything? Or is it
No.
more than that?
No. And the problem with insurance is, most insurances will cover you. But if you get hit with a virus, number one, you're going to be down for multiple days. It's not enough for us to just restore data, which is typically the way that we would do it. You have to make sure that you've eliminated that virus from every possible location in the practice. That takes a long time. Another thing that a lot of people don't know, and this was from a Health and Human Services release back in 2016, is that they consider a ransomware infection to be a breach. Even though most of us don't think of a breach in those terms, we think of a breach as, oh, someone hacked into my network, or I lost my laptop or a thumb drive or something like that. The way that Health and Human Services looks at a breach is loss of control of your data, which is exactly what a ransomware does. It locks the files. So unless you can establish that there's a very low chance of a compromise, which is almost impossible to do, then you suffered a breach. And unlike a lot of HIPAA, which is somewhat ambiguous and open to interpretation, the breach notification rule is not. It says very clearly that if you suffered a breach, you have to be listed on their website. It's called the Wall of Shame. You have to notify the local news media. But the absolute worst part is you have to notify all your patients in writing. So having that insurance might be great. That's not going to help you if you lose 20, 25% of your patient population because you had to send out a letter to all of us that, oops, sorry, but somebody now has your credit card information and your driver's licenses, and sorry that it happened. So our approach, to answer your question, is more of a three-pronged approach. Our first approach is prevention. What can we do to make sure that you keep the patient information secure? And the one that we've always used in the past, which we continue to use, is firewalls, a hardware firewall, not the one that's built into Windows, business class firewall. Even though all routers and cable modems have a mediocre firewall built into them, we want like a real business class one from Sophos or SonicWall or WatchGuard or ones like that. Secondarily, we're doing some type of anti-ransomware, anti-malware software. We install it on every workstation. A lot of people forget to do the server, which is the most critical one. You have to have it on the server. The third thing you have to do is to make sure that your operating system, Windows in most cases, is current and patched. And that's why anyone that's works with an IT person, they knew that every few years, the IT guy is coming to you and saying, hey, you need to replace your computers because Windows 7 is going to end of life, or Windows 10, and recently it was Server 2012, and this coming January is going to be Server 2016. And the issue isn't that you lose support to Microsoft, because most people never call them. It's that you no longer have security patches, which means you're at risk. By definition, it's a HIPAA violation if you are running an outdated operating system that's no longer patched. So if you're still running Windows 7, Windows 10, Server 2012, and 2016 in a few months, I highly recommend that you replace those. The problem with all of that is that a lot of the newer viruses are what's known as zero-day. And there's different definitions for zero-day. Zero-day it technically means that the antivirus companies have had 0 days to find a cure for that virus that you're being hit with. What it really means is that virus is exploiting a vulnerability that nobody knew existed beforehand. And the problem with that is that your firewall, your antivirus software, your operating system, it doesn't know that it's a virus. It doesn't know what to do with it. So there's a newer type of software that we've been recommending called application whitelisting. It basically, we create a list of all the programs that are on your network that are good to run. And if a program tries to run, and all viruses are just tiny little programs, just a series of instructions that tells what to do. If that tries to run and is not on that approved list, it gets stopped in its tracks. So that's all the preventative. The reality is, no matter how good your firewall is, or anti-malware, or application whitelisting, stuff is going to get through eventually. The criminals are always usually one step ahead. So that's phase 2 for us, is making sure that you can recover. You mentioned one of them, which we highly recommend, is some type of cyber liability insurance. That's going to cover you for your lost revenues if you're down for a number of days. God forbid you have to pay the ransom. It'll cover you for that. God forbid you get sued by patients because you have to send them that letter. It'll cover you for that as well. The second, and I briefly talked about this before, is that you have to have a really good, well-tested backup and disaster recovery system that you know that if you get hit with a virus, or if your server goes down for whatever reason, that you can get back up and running, and we measure that in minutes, not days. So that's the most critical. And the third would be just more staff training, just because more often than not, we find that when someone gets hit with a ransomware, it's because you or your staff did something you shouldn't have. You clicked on a link in an email that you thought was from a colleague, or you went to a website that was a little sketchy. That's how these things happen. So, that's kind of our approach. Is it's almost like a funnel that we want to catch as much as we can at the beginning, which is the firewall and the antivirus. But if that gets through, then we want to have the application whitelisted to stop it in its tracks. And if that still doesn't work, then we need to make sure we've got a really good backup that we can restore once we've, of course, removed any traces of that virus. Because restoring a backup doesn't do you any good if the virus is still in your network. It's just going to come right back.
This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I have a question on AI, because I know it's a hot topic and everybody's probably thinking about AI. And you made a comment, during our earlier conversation. There's a lot of things that call themselves AI, but they're not necessarily good for you. Either they don't do what they're supposed to, or they do such an inferior job, you might as well not have it because it's not helping you, it's hurting you, right?
Yeah.
To your take on AI, any nuggets you want to leave our audience with?
I think the one most critical takeaway is that a lot of people are using AI for good reasons. First of all, there's clinical AI, there's Overjet, there's Pearl. There's all these clinical programs. Where we're seeing a lot of development now is more administrative, insurance, submissions and estimations, and virtual office managers and assistants, and all these different things that make your life easier. It's important to understand that under no circumstances should you be putting patient information into a public-facing AI. ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, those are all public AI things. And a lot of things that they do would not be ideal or even legal from a HIPAA standpoint. A lot of these AI companies will keep the data because these are mostly cloud-based services, they'll keep the data and use it for training the AI models. They might send it to another server. If they have access to patient information, they will not sign a business associate agreement, which is by law, anyone that has access to your patient information, you have to have a signed business associate agreement with them. They will not sign anything like that. They're not necessarily encrypting the data. You have no idea what happens to that data. You can certainly use AI to maybe create, a merge or a letter that would go out to all patients, but you can't put anything in there. HIPAA has 18 different identifiers that if any one of those are in there, and that would include things like the patient's name, date of birth, chart ID, phone number, address, obviously a full facial photo. Any of that is part of it is considered electronic protected health information, and it's subject to all the rules of HIPAA as far as encryption and backup and who has access to it. So if there's any takeaways from AI, there's nothing wrong with tools like ChatGPT, but if you're going to use it, you can't put anything that is patient information into them.
Fair enough. Totally makes sense. So you're saying that's the first thing they need to be careful of. But let's go back to, where is AI working? I'm a fan of Overjet. Is there anything like, having been doing, you have been doing this for a long time, where you're like, yep, that's good. Yep. So even if you don't name the bad ones, just name the good ones.
Yeah, no, I love Overjet. I love Pearl. I love the clinical ones. I think some of the administrative runs still have a little ways to go. I worry about people using AI as a crutch. It's not really what it's there for. It's to make my life easier. In my experience, we've worked with offices that are using multiple AI systems. And my thought process with AI is supposed to make your life more efficient, that you should have less things to worry about, that things are happening behind the scenes. In my experience, for these offices that might have 4, 5, 6 different AI systems going, it is way more work than what they had without the AI. They're doing way more segmentation. They're doing a lot more clicking. There's a lot more systems and dashboards that they have to manage. That's not in my mind, a better scenario. It's harder on your team if they have to, know how to be proficient in 5 or 6 different systems and have all these different portals and dashboards and software systems that they have to learn and become proficient at. So I take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, clinically, I think it makes perfect sense. I haven't found that one killer AI system. And like I said, you can't use a public-facing one. You have to do a really good job of vetting these vendors. You need to make sure that they have all the appropriate certifications. You need to understand what they do with the data. They need to be willing to sign a BAA with you, a business associate agreement. But I think that the one company that finds a single AI platform that can handle everything for an office, they will be very, very successful. But right now, we're not seeing that. They're very limited in the scope of what each individual AI system can do. And I think it's not necessarily making life better for dental offices yet. We'll get there. And I'm not a huge fan of AI. I mean, I like the concept. As an IT provider, we can't stand it because they are gobbling up all the RAM and enterprise hard drives that we normally use. So any of my clients are well aware of this, because a server that we would purchase for somebody 6 months ago was coming in at, $3,800, maybe $4,000, give or take, for that server. The exact same server, exact same specs are now $7,800. And Dell, which is what we use mostly, they're not shipping until late September, early October. I mean, you just can't get it. Even refurbished ones, which that's what we've started doing for our clients, is because they come with, they're through Dell certified resellers. So it has the same parts, the same warranty, just some of the parts are used. But even those are, the best price we can get now for a refurbished server is close to $5,000 for what really should be $2,500 worth of parts and software. So, as much as I like the concept of AI and what it can do, we're seeing this massive shortage of memory and hard drives that I don't see any relief in sight to at least 2030, if that, maybe longer. It's going to be a while.
Wow. So you're saying buy those stocks?
Well, yeah, if you had NVIDIA, my wife was smart enough to buy NVIDIA years ago. That's huge. My son was on my case to buy Bitcoin back when it was at 5,000. And we bought a little Doge. And of course that exploded, but it's come down to earth. It's half of what it was back in October, November. So
yeah, so it's
also for my likes.
Yeah, fair enough. Before we jump into this, I really want to thank you for your comments on AI, because that's the number one question I also get. Like, how is AI changing the way patients find us? How is AI changing marketing? And I just want to share a tip, because we are on the topic of AI. What I have found is AI has increased how much people use, the internet or their devices to find the right dentist. Because now you can ask very, very specific questions. I'm this kind of a person, I'm looking for this type of a dentist, and AI will figure it all out and give you like the top 3 recommendations. And the other funny thing is patients trust these recommendations as if, it's written by some expert human being, right? Even though, like you said, it's made up and a lot of times it's nonsense, but the consumers think it's important. So one of the things we are doing, internally is we are, of course, leaning into Google's AI, right? Google AI Overview and AI Mode, but also ChatGPT and Perplexity, because we are hearing from our doctors that patients, when they come from these AI platforms, whether it's Google or ChatGPT, they tend to the sale is already done. They don't need to do any selling. Patients are already convinced. It's kind of interesting phenomenon that we are noticing. So, by the way, if anyone is interested in learning about how you are doing on the world of AI, book a marketing strategy meeting. It's our gift to you.
I want to book that with you, because I'm, for my business, I'm tired of doing all the marketing, all the email blasts that I do and webinars, and sign me up.
Absolutely. It's equa.com/TD, ekwa.com/TD. Of course, Dr. Levine, we will book that strategy meeting with you, and we would love to help you as well. Let me switch gears a little bit. I know you kind of talked about this $50,000 check, and people didn't want to couldn't afford it, so you went into this word you threw at me. Again, I'm of course I'm a novice because I haven't run a company like yours, nor do I know a lot about what you do. But as a novice, like, what is managed services? Like, okay, I'm a dentist. I know dentistry. I don't know anything about tech. I don't know anything about anything. So if I come and ask you, Dr. Levine, what can you do for me? Right? What do you do for me? Like, is it I just pay you just like a subscription, I pay you a monthly amount and you take care of it? What happens to the hardware? Again, can I buy it as a subscription or do I buy it up front? Or maybe I don't need as much hardware as I used to because everything is in the cloud. So help me understand, like, what like why do I need someone like you and how does it all work?
Right. So first off, every IT person, every IT company is different. In the past, there were a lot of services that we had for our clients, backup and patching and antivirus. Those all needed to be updated on a regular basis. There was no way to automate that process. So one of the things that we would do for our clients is on a regular basis, usually weekly, sometimes once a month, we had an inventory of all the programs on their network. We would go out, find the patches, apply the patches, reboot the computers. Tons and tons of billable hours. We loved it. Our clients, not so much, because it was tons and tons of billable hours. And maybe like 10 years ago, a little bit less, this whole concept of automation came into play, where software systems were developed that could do the things that we used to have to do manually on an automatic basis. So, most people are familiar with the fact that Windows in Office, for the most part, you can set up automatic updating. We don't do that for our clients just because we know that Microsoft's patches are sometimes more trouble than what they're trying to fix, and you have no control over the timing of that. We typically turn that off for our clients and have our own patch management, that we set the schedule on which patches we're going to apply. We want to have a little more control over it. But we have all kinds of systems in place that we don't have to charge the patient on a per hour basis. They can pay a monthly. Now, I know a lot of dentists are somewhat, not a big fan of subscriptions. They don't like the monthly payment. And then we say, great, you can pay us up front for the whole year or for 2 years or 3 years, and we'll get this at different discounts. And the reason that we do that is that most of the vendors that an IT or an MSP, managed service provider, would use, they charge us upfront for that year. If we buy a year's worth of their software, a year's worth of storage on, HIPAA compliant server, whatever, we have to pay it up front. So we have to have a contract with that client because, the client decides after a month, you know what, I think I'm just going to do this on my own. Thanks very much. I've bought all this software and all these services for somebody on their behalf that I'm no longer being paid for. So we have to protect ourselves from that. We know we know people hate that, but we do have a large number of our clients will prepay us for a year because we give them like a discount for 1 year. And if they commit to 2 years, we double the discount and triple it for 3 years. So we try to give them a reason to do that. There's no cookie cutter approach. And what we have found, the way that we approach when someone calls me up or they see me on Dental Town or seen my articles in Dental Economics, or they're going to listen to this podcast and they say, hey, I have questions. I'm not sure what I need from my office. Am I doing everything within reason to protect the patient information? Am I HIPAA compliant? What we have started doing, we've done it for a long time. What we started doing is not charging for it, is to offer them we call it a security audit or a technical audit, where, listen, as any dentist knows, you can't treatment plan unless you diagnose first. And that's the exact same approach that I take. But what we have been doing lately, and we're happy to do this for anyone that's listening to this podcast, is to eliminate that barrier to entry, to say, hey, we will log into your network. We're going to see, with your permission, you can watch what we're doing. We're going to gather data. We're going to see what what operating systems you're running. What are you doing for backup? Do you have encryption in place? Do you have a firewall? When's the last time you did a risk assessment, if ever? Let's do a full, an evaluation. And it doesn't take long, usually about 30, 40 minutes tops. And based on that, we can then sit down with the client and say, okay, here's what we found. Here's our concerns. And here's what we think is the best way to deal with this. Here are your options. Here's what the different options would cost. That whole process, we're happy to offer that to your listeners at no cost. So there's zero cost, zero obligation. Anyone that's ever worked with me knows that I'm not about the hard sell. I'm about educating people to let them know this is where you're at. This is where you're at risk. Whether you believe me or not, that's up to you. But these are things that we can help with. We, of course, would love to work with you. But if not, you've got the information to go out and find someone else. One of the most common questions we get is that, hey, I've got a local IT guy. He's been good for us for like the little things, but I know he doesn't understand HIPAA or he doesn't really know cybersecurity. Can you work with him? And the answer is absolutely. We learned a long time ago how to play nicely with others. And we're more than happy to have a local IT person that handles the day-to-day IT. And we fill in the gaps. We handle the backup. We handle the cybersecurity. We handle the insurance. We handle all the things. And we work with the IT person that they know what we're doing. And, they can try to do some troubleshooting themselves, or we'll hop onto the Zoom call with them, or, get on the phone with them to help them through an issue. It's collaborative, because at the end of the day, for most of our clients, what they care about is sleeping well at night, knowing that they've got things under control. And however that looks like, we're happy to do it. We're not, it's us or nothing. That's just not the approach that we take. But as I said, our overall approach to things is let us help you to figure out where you're at risk and let you know, what your options are. At the end of the day, it's your practice, your money. You decide what's best. And of course, either way, we're more than happy to be part of that.
That's brilliant. So let me kind of paraphrase what I understand, right? So if I am a practice owner, somebody has to do all of this stuff, keep things updated, keep things compliant, proactively, make sure I have insurance, make sure my team is trained. So you are like a done for you, we'll take care of this for you. Of course, if they have their own IT guy, you will work with the IT, so you augment the IT person. But if they don't, you'll take care of the whole thing. And of course, there are different options with different pros and cons, or different,
right. We're turnkey.
They can pick and choose.
We're a one-stop shop. We work with dentists occasionally some of them are very computer savvy, and a lot of them say, hey, I think I want to do this myself. This may not be the right fit. That's fine. All the power to you. And that's what we've typically found. That's a great philosophy until the day something goes wrong. Yes. And then you got a day full of patients, then you don't have the time to deal with it. And all of a sudden you don't have access to your schedule. You can't take x-rays. You're dead in the water, and you don't have anyone you can turn to because you're the IT person. You don't have someone else. So even though I understand maybe it sounds self-serving, I think that IT managed services for dental offices have become so complex, and you mix in HIPAA compliance and you mix in AI. And I just don't think it's something that most dentists should be doing on their own. They really would benefit. It doesn't have to be us, it can be anybody, but to work with a managed service provider, an IT provider that knows healthcare, that knows dentistry, that can be there to help guide them and resolve any problems. And we tell people, listen, we're not cheap. We understand that. But when you look at, what did that 2 days or 3 days of downtime cost you because you couldn't function? And in almost all cases, it cost them more to be down for a few days than it did for 6-7 months of our services. So right. we can always justify the cost, or at least I can justify it. And that's honestly one of the other issues that we run into, is that if it's done properly, if things are set up properly and managed and monitored, you shouldn't need to be calling your IT company on a daily basis or a weekly basis. It should be behind the scenes and you're not even aware of it. So one of the more common scenarios that we see is we'll get to that end of that contract. It's been a year, 2 years, whatever, and we'll call them up and say, listen, we can keep the fees the same, or, we've got to bump it up 2 or 3%. Our prices went up a little bit. And they'll say to me, well, we love your team, but we didn't really think we needed you that much this year, so we're not sure if we're going to renew. Of course, we have a full report of the 37 times that we had to log into their network to deal with issues that they weren't even aware of because it was all done after hours or behind the scenes. But if it's done right, you shouldn't really be dealing with IT issues on a regular basis. It really should be done. IT's there to help you, not to give you more frustration.
Right. Great ideas, you don't even know they're there, right? That's the best idea, right?
Pretty much.
If you are doing your job, they should never have to think about you. The only time they have to think about you is somebody messed up somewhere, whether it's right. Some problem came in and nobody was catching it and so forth. So one last question before I ask you to help our listeners book that meeting or get that free audit you talked about, and of course your socials and whatnot. I know there are other players who quote unquote specialize in dentistry, right? I mean IT companies. Yes. But being a dentist, you have a different viewpoint, different perspective. Like, how would you say, how has that shaped you, or why do you think you are different from quote unquote IT companies that help dentists?
Right. So, first off, a lot of IT companies that work with dental are not exclusive to dental. They might do medicine, they might do law, they might do whatever. That's all we do. We know dental systems inside and out. My very first hire was in January of 2004. He's still with me. My second hire was in May of 2004. He's still with me. My third one was in 2012, I think. He's still with me. I hired a guy to handle just the backups for us, like right around COVID. He's still with me. My first office manager left. She moved out of state 15 years ago. The person that replaced her is still with me. I mean, we keep the same team intact, and all we know is dental. So I think the approach that I took with my business is because when I was in practice, and again, this was back in the early 90s. This was long before you had any consolidation. So there was nobody. I mean, I had so many different systems. I had a digital x-ray system. I had my practice management software system. I had my image management. I had other things that I was doing in the office. And there was no one person that I could turn to that could be the quarterback, that could say, okay, I'm going to take charge of all these. And that's what I think we bring to the table. The other approach that I've taken is to really be comprehensive. We know a ton of other dental-specific, dental-focused managed service providers out there. Few, if any, do a HIPAA risk assessment. It makes no sense to me. There's a HIPAA law that says you have to do a risk assessment. When we do it, we find all kinds of issues. And typically, when we do a risk assessment, there's going to be at least 5 to 10 hours of labor involved to resolve those issues. So as an IT provider, we get to charge for the risk assessment. We get to charge for our time to fix the problems. Why wouldn't an IT company offer this to their clients? Because, how are you supposed to know where you're at when it comes to HIPAA compliance and cybersecurity readiness if you don't look? And it just baffles me that there aren't more dental IT companies that do risk assessments, that do HIPAA management plans, that offer cyber liability insurance, that offer HIPAA manuals. I mean, these are all things that offices need. It's right up our alley. You can't do a HIPAA risk assessment without looking at the IT. It's a critical part of all that. So that's kind of been, another difference that I think we have is that I'm comprehensive. Our typical client is going to get a full suite that has every service, unlimited IT support. There's no stone unturned. There isn't a single thing that's not in that you need on a daily basis. Just because, like I said, we don't want them to be at risk. You can't, as much as I wish there was just one product or one piece of hardware you could buy and be done, you can't. In the IT world, we call it a stack, a set of services, hardware components that allows us to get to the desired end result, which is security, compliance, peace of mind. And my approach is we need to have everything we can possibly have in that stack that you would need. So there's nothing that we provide to our clients that they don't need. That's not other than the insurance, which I guess is optional, which we obviously don't recommend that you go without insurance. But other than that, every single service that we do for our clients has an associated HIPAA law. It's mandatory. They're not really optional. So now, do all of our clients do that? No. I wish they would, but again, our approach is we're going to educate them and let them know where they're at risk. And at the end of the day, it's their practice. They can decide, what's the best path forward.
Fair enough. I think one thing you forgot to name, which is obvious to me, is you teach. I mean, that's really you're right here teaching people. I don't see your competitors doing that. Maybe because, like you said, for them, it's just a client. For you, this is a group of people you care about. So it's about, giving them like everything, not just giving them the bare bones or the minimum required, but just doing everything and giving them the choice what they want to pick from that everything, right? So, and you do that, willingly in webinars and, podcasts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm unique that way. I mean, I talk to a lot of my colleagues. Most IT guys, most IT people, they love the operations part. They love the nuts and bolts of running their business. They hate sales. They hate marketing. I'm literally the I enjoy the technical parts as well. I love doing webinars. I write for Dental Economics. I do webinars for other companies. I'm always on Dental Town answering questions. I lecture all over. I've lectured at every major meeting. I love this part. I love the teaching aspect of it. So, you're right. There's not a lot of people who do dental IT that are out there on the lecture circuit or writing for dental journals.
Thank you. So as we bring this to a close, Dr. Levine, can you please help our listeners get that audit? That would be a huge benefit to our listeners. Tell us how they can go about doing that. And also, if somebody is curious, they want to follow you, tap into your education, how they can do that as well.
So, if you go to Google and just enter my name, my company's name is The Digital Dentist, The Digital Dentist. So if you went to thedigitaldentist.com, there's a few ways there. On my website, there's a form that you can fill out that you want information. A few months ago, I actually hired a company to have live 24/7 real humans, not AI bots, managing my website. That if you're on there, someone, Dee, Gary, there's a few other different people, depending on their shift, will actually come on and say, hey, can I help you? Are you a client? What do you need? How can we help you here? If it's after hours, they'll just refer you back to the office. They'll gather your information. But a lot of times they can, get you in touch with my office manager, get you in touch with me. So if they want to do a call, if you go to thedigitaldentist.com/call, that'll take you right to my schedule, to my Calendly schedule. You can book it right on there. We have a toll-free number, which is 866-204-3398. Extension 200 gets you to my office manager, Candice. She'll be happy to book a call with you. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X. I'm on LinkedIn. If you search for Digital Dentist or Lauren Levine on any one of those, you can DM me, through X or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. I'm going to get all those as well. So, between my website, the phone, social media, there's lots of ways to get a hold of me. And just tell me that you were listening to the podcast, you would like to take advantage of the offer, and we'll find a time. We're very flexible. Even though we're based in Southern California, most of our clients are on the East Coast and Midwest. So my first technician usually comes in around 5:30 in the morning, our time. The next guy comes on at 7, the next guy comes on at 8. And then they start taking off towards the end of the day at various. So we basically have coverage from 5:30 in the morning to 5 p.m. Pacific time. So typically, we're there when you're there. And we can always, if someone has a large project that needs to go over a weekend, you can easily schedule that with our team that they'll be available on weekends as well. We're not typically, monitoring the calls on weekends, looking for emergencies. We all have families. But if you say, hey, I'm planning to upgrade my computers, we're doing a major overhaul of the software, it's going to happen on the weekend, you can actually schedule the time with our technician to be there. So we work every day.
That's amazing, Dr. Levine. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I think
Thank you.
Your perspective, being able to explain things in a layman's terms is very, very valuable. And I think some of the people I've heard, they just make it like my eyes start spinning, like my head starts spinning. Just they throw all these buzzwords and they kind of confuse you. So, anyways, thank you for doing that. And I think but the smartest people in the world, they can explain things in a way that a 10th grader can understand. So you definitely have that gift.
Wow, thank you.
Appreciate what you're doing. And I also want to take a minute to thank our listeners. Please take advantage of Dr. Levine's personal offer to talk to you, do the audit for you. So we'll put all those links in the show notes. So if you go to the podcast and look at the show notes, you will get all of that. But of course, just Google Dr. Levine. You will figure it out. It's not too complicated. So in case you forget, just need to remember his name. So thank you, Dr. Levine. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
When you cry, be sure to dry your eyes, 'cause better days are sure to come.